Hi, before this podcast starts, I just want to explain that this was the very first one we ever did. And because of that, some of the sound is a little bit off. However, we decided that because there was some good stuff in here, it seemed a shame to just throw it out. I hope you still enjoy it. Hi, my name is Gary and welcome to this Robin of Sherwood podcast, where we talk about the classic 1980s series starring Michael Praed and Jason Connery. In this episode, we're going to talk about Herne the Hunter, and I'm lucky enough to have my co-hosts Dan and Karen with me.
So we should talk about the history a little bit of the character, where his inspirations came from, if we know such things. So,
yeah, I think we do.
Yeah, I reckon so too, rather sneakily. So from what I remember from Kip Carpenter saying, he was saying that he based the character vaguely on Canunus. Is that like a Roman god or something?
No, Canunus is Celtic god. He's on the Gunderstruck Cauldron, if anybody's familiar with that. He's always presented as a god with horns. They're not always deer antlers, but they usually are. He's usually got a snake in one hand and a Celtic torque in the other hand. And he's usually sitting cross-legged.
Yeah.
But he's definitely sort of, I think he's sort of seen as like a wild god. He is like a god of the animals, you know.
Like a wild hunt or something.
Yeah, there's definite connections with that. The wild hunt's right across Europe it as like a legend, and various personalities, I suppose, for want of a better word, are said to lead it. So you've got like King Arthur's sometimes said to lead it, Odin, you know, various people, and Herne/Canunus is one of the people who is said to lead it.
Yeah, right. But like, this is the first time it's ever been in Robin Hood.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it must have been 25 years ago. I had an argument with somebody online who was going, you know, of course the ancient tale of Herne the Hunter and Robin Hood, you know, and it goes back centuries. No, it doesn't. It goes back to 1983.
Yeah. Apparently, I heard that there is an American book that calls it an ancient legend where Robin is Herne's son, and you have to think it's truly ancient, going back to all the way to 1984.
Yeah.
So it is some. I guess it fitted so well that people just think it was always part of it.
Yeah, I mean,
there was a story published in the 1800s that where Robin meets a kind of a puckish horned character, but he's in no way like Herne is in the series. He's not an advisor. It's just a transitory story, really. It's just meeting a spirit of the woods, and then that's it.
Yeah, is that the one you can find the picture online?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking. So I have seen that one, because I looked at it and at first I thought it was Herne. But if it's not, then... But it's, again, it's an interesting coincidence.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, Herne himself as a legend, I mean, it's basically coming from, you know, sort of Windsor Great Park. I think Shakespeare references it in one of his plays at some point.
Yeah, it's Merry Wives of Windsor, isn't it?
Yeah. But, you know, obviously Windsor's nowhere near Sherwood Forest. The original legend, it doesn't really have anything, much of a connection to how Kipps envisaged him on screen either. I think the original Herne the Hunter guy, if I remember rightly, I think he did have horns on his head. I think was he cuckolded or something? And then he was hung from a tree.
Yeah, and then decided to haunt the park.
Yeah.
For some reason. But, I mean, I don't really know that much about the Shakespeare version, but, like, I only really know the Robin version. And, of course, in my mind, because I don't know much about it, I tend to associate it with, like, Stone Age art for some reason. That idea of the
There's definite connections, isn't there? There's like the Star. Is it Star Car?
Star Car, yes.
Yeah, they've got the masks of I think they're deer, which they drilled holes in for their faces.
Yes.
I mean, they don't know exactly what it was for, but they certainly you could draw a line. I think. I mean, Dan knows more about it than I do. I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I would certainly go with that. That it's certainly back to the Mesolithic period, and we're talking about 10,000 plus years ago that various shamans were adopting animalistic gods and dressing up and wearing antlers either to aid them into otherworldly states or just merely for hunting, really. It's that's certainly what I thought Kip was going with, because before HTV came up with the costume, his original idea for Herne would be just to have an old man with a pair of antlers on his head, so you could see more of the physical actor and not someone in a costume per se.
Yeah, I mean, there is something primal about it when you see him for the first time, when he comes over the hill.
Yes.
I don't know what it is, but for some reason, I think it was at that point that it just really grabbed me. So
there's a kind of a pulsing heart rate musical track over the top of it, isn't it? It gets you really kind of right in the gut.
Yeah, it's really quite a beautiful image. But there is something primal about it, I felt at the time.
Yeah, I think even though Kip hated the costume, and sort of, I think he's on record stating that he would have stopped it getting on screen if he'd have seen it early enough.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a shame if he'd have done that. I think we'd have lost something really iconic.
It is iconic, I think. It really does visually work. I mean, if you look...
I don't know who came up with the idea. I think that's sort of been lost in time, but
if you look at
it's fantastic.
That moment...
I'm sure it's coming.
When he pops up, and you know the bit I mean, when Robin's in the costume and he pops up as Herne.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so... You're like, wow. It looks fantastic.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, what was it like for you guys when you first saw the character on screen?
I don't remember really that. It just the whole thing to me felt right. I don't remember sort of feeling like, oh, what's this, or any kind of shock. It just seemed to just be natural, like he was supposed to be there. That's probably more my memory of it.
Same for me.
Yeah.
I'd grown up with the Arthurian mythos, really, and so I was familiar with the Merlin-esque figure, and that's what I saw Herne as being a wise old man rather than a god per se.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was obviously familiar with Excalibur. So I was used to the Merlin figure, but I'd never seen anything that visually looked like Herne.
Yes.
So it was something completely new for me.
I mean, I think Robin of Sherwood, in a way, to me, well, from my memory, I mean, records may blow this out of the water, but my memory as a child growing up was sort of the mid-70s onwards, the books that I'm getting exposed to, sort of the youth kind of novels from like Puffin or what have you, have often got a strong Dark Age and British mythology element to them, and that's sort of growing as a thing into the 70s. By about the mid-late 70s, it's starting to filter onto screen. I'm thinking of things like the Moon Stallion, for example. There were others, and Robin of Sherwood to me is sort of that last flowering of that kind of like a cultural movement kind of thing.
That kind of 80s fantasy in that style.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of
quite like it, but it just broadly in that thing of like, you're almost creating a new mythology of Britain, and it fits in there.
I think that really is it. I mean, it has some special magic to it that you can almost touch. You can believe in it.
It hangs together, doesn't it? Its own,
Yeah. And
its own, within its own world, everything makes sense.
yeah, absolutely. It's like, for me, it's like there was something missing from Robin Hood and they put it in it. And it's difficult to accept Robin Hood without those magical elements. Well, not accept it, but it's just not as powerful, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
If you look at all the latest versions, we've had, what's he called, Taron Egerton, Russell Crowe. We had that one, that awful one from a year or two ago where Gail Gisborne seemed to be played by a naked Philip Schofield. What the hell was going on there?
I've no idea what series that one is, and now
It's a film. It's a long-budget British film. I have no idea what happened there, but that's what I thought. I thought, why is there a naked Philip Schofield lookalike running around playing games? What's that, sorry?
I'm trying to think what it was. I was just thinking the Guy Ritchie King Arthur, and obviously that's a completely different mythological character.
Oh, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
Going to do Robin Hood in a similar vein, but because the King Arthur film fell apart, they didn't do it.
Thank heaven for small mercies.
Yeah, that's what we all thought. But, I mean, we had Russell Crowe as well. Loxley Decimus Meridius. And, yeah, but none of them, as I recall, had any magic in it.
No, I think
kind of
on screen, Prince of Thieves was probably the last one that had a bit of
tiny little bit with Patrick Bergin at the very end, which was nice.
Yeah.
But
tiny bit in the BBC's one, but it was, you had to blink and you'd miss it. I think it was the end of maybe the first or second episode, and suddenly, for some reason, Robin's eyes flashed green, and I kind of thought, "Ooh, what's this?" And they never did anything with it after that.
No.
I don't remember that.
No, well, I remember hearing from someone that the BBC, when they started the BBC one, they sat around with a bunch of Robin of Sherwood DVDs and said, "Oh, how are we going to do something like this?" And decided not to.
Sure.
But again, that's something we can talk about in another podcast, because that's a pretty deep
yeah, we've gone wandering off.
Yeah. But we digress.
Yes.
So okay, I mean, Herne appeared in all three series, and during that time he did change a little bit in what he could and couldn't do. So in series 1 he feels very grounded as a character. The magic's a bit more sleight of hand, but by series 3 he can kind of beam in and out Star Trek style.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Is that something you were with or against, or?
Doesn't he beam in Star Trek style in Rhiannon's, at Rhiannon's wheel in Full?
He appears. He
Yeah.
doesn't beam in. He's just suddenly there.
Yeah, but I mean, to me that's the same thing though.
He kind of sneaks up like a ninja, I guess.
So you thought he was like, say, hiding behind a rock and jumped out?
No, I
thought he just went, ta-da! I teleported.
I kind of interpret it as the director Ian Sharp kind of leaving it very ambiguous.
Right.
So, like, if Herne to go to the wheel,
always there, but they just noticed him, kind of thing.
Yeah. You could interpret it in various ways, I guess. Although, having said that, in Witch of Elston, he does manage to appear in the water as a reflection. So you can argue that he's always had those qualities, but I think by the end of the run, he was kind of a bit more able to do more things, shall we say, than he was at the start, possibly. I mean, do you think this was a good change to make, or was it too much?
I think we always talk about the Herne problem and what to do with Herne, and I think they were trying to think cliffs and so forth. A lot of people I've talked to have kind of wondered whether he was actually there or whether it was a figment of the old Welshman's.
Oh, in Swords of Wayland, you mean?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
yes.
Because that is a beautiful visual moment, I think. When it suddenly zooms in on the rocks and Herne's there. But, I mean, you can argue as to whether it makes any physical sense, at which case he's a spirit that can move around.
At the end of the day, we all need to go on holiday, so...
Yeah, and it would make sense, but I bet Herne was like, look, I came here for a break. Why is my kid here?
Yes.
You know?
I mean, is it like it's a magic teleporting costume, you know? Because he doesn't do any weird woo-woo stuff when he hasn't got his headdress on.
Oh.
Yes. But it's the weight on the head, you see, it makes him go a bit funny.
Yeah, it gives him magical powers.
Yeah.
Simply the weight of it. I guess. Now, what did you make of this costume of his? Just to talk a bit about that. I mean, we've talked about how it looks very iconic, but I mean, was it something would you have a different costume had they made the movie, or would you want it to stick with the Herne costume?
I'd have kept it the same, I think.
They made it almost kind of like a Morris Dancer costume with all the tassels and tails and so forth, which I didn't mind so much, but you saw it slowly unravelling over the course of the series. It seemed to be much less ragged in the third series for some reason.
I think if there's a deleted scene where Herne suddenly Morris dances, I want to see it. That would be fantastic and unexpected. I remember at one point in one of the fan club magazines they were talking about doing the movie, and the movie, as I recall, was with Touchstone or someone.
Yeah.
And they interviewed someone from there who was on the production, and they were saying there is no way we're having the Herne costume in it because the audiences won't accept it at the cinema. So there was either Herne was not going to be in it at all, or he was just going to be John Avineri. So it would have probably changed for the movie anyway, if they've gone with Touchstone. There were also, for some reason, they were talking about dyeing Jason's hair black in it or something. There was some weird ideas going around for that. But as regards Herne, they was like saying no way. And it might have had something to do with the wider American audiences or something where they thought it wouldn't fly.
Possibly because you've got the pagan element, which obviously a good portion of the Bible Belt of America might well have had a problem with. You've also, just going back a bit to what we were saying before, with Canunus being a horned god, there's theories that the horned god Canunus is what fed into the physical appearance of the devil having horns. So if you've got this character in Robin of Sherwood who's got a great stonking set of horns on his head, then some people could extrapolate from that he is the devil / he is evil, you know. So they're not necessarily going to take kindly to that on screen. Maybe that was the thinking behind it.
It might well have been. I mean, we can talk a little about the magical controversy that they had a little bit with Robin when it aired right now. And the whole National Viewers and Listeners Association, who seemed to complain a lot. And I believe Kip had to go on a show with Mary Whitehouse and defend Robin. Have you heard anything about that?
I would love to see it.
Oh, me too.
I don't know what the show I remember is he was very worried about going on, and he talks about it in the DVD commentaries, I believe, where he basically kind of came up with this idea of Mary Whitehouse is a very astute lady, and I need to somehow trick her or find a way of getting out of this. And I forget what the story was at all. I think he kind of said to her at the time, I find it very hard because I'm a professional writer and Mary, you're a professional what? And Mary goes, I'm not a professional anything. And he goes, oh, okay, then I'm dealing with an amateur. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and then he had a good go at her. Eventually, apparently, he found out that she'd not actually watched the series at all. It was just based on what other people had told her about it.
From what I remember, I don't think Robin of Sherwood was particularly on her radar until it came to the Swords of Wayland episode.
Oh, yeah.
And from what I recall, the biggest problems that she had was that they're raising the devil. There were several like crucifixion symbols during the episode. Like, for example, when Loxley's captured, he's like strung up in a crucifixion pose between two horseback riders, and so he, arms are stretched. And she had a problem with this taking part on the Easter weekend. And I have to say, she probably did have a point to some extent because, biggest festival in the Christian calendar, and, this program that's purporting to be a family program, at Easter Sunday when loads are sitting down to, have family time, and they're actually raising the devil.
Yeah. I think Kip
I can see a point.
I think Kip could be a little bit mischievous sometimes.
Yeah.
And probably enjoyed doing that.
I just think like when Kip wrote the idea, I doubt he had any idea when it was going to be aired. He probably had no control over when it was aired. Somebody at ITV probably thought, oh great, we've got a double episode of Ross, and we put it on at Easter weekend.
Yeah.
It was out of order, wasn't it? So,
with the thinking.
Yeah, and I just think it was a lot of people not necessarily being sensitive to how other people might react to it.
I think it's because if you say Robin Hood, people tend to think it's for kids, or did at that time.
Yeah.
And suddenly you have a version that was a little more grown up. It had all these mystical elements, and people weren't expecting that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they picked up some viewers that weekend who'd never seen the series before, and some would have been horrified, I'm quite sure.
Oh, one hopes. But yeah, I mean, I remember there was a wonderful, I wish I'd kept it, a wonderful article from 1983 from the Robin Hood Society, and they were expressing their concerns about this new series that was going to air, saying it seems to be full of nothing but sex and violence and orgies. And I wish I had kept it because it was great. And in order to illustrate this article, they had the picture of Michael when he's sitting on the haystack with his
legs akimbo picture.
About as far apart as I've ever seen a man have his legs apart. I mean, whether he did stretching exercises or anything, I don't know, but the guy could probably kick well above his head.
Yeah, he's practically doing a plie, isn't he?
Yeah, but yeah, they used this to illustrate that, which is kind of funny.
I have a News of the World article. It's a double-page spread of that particular pose.
Yeah,
and
that's the picture of
the Orchard Robins.
Yeah, and they've got a picture of Jason as well.
That's right.
Was that the one after the show had aired when Jason had gone off and done quite a dodgy film?
I think they had a couple of Robins, so it probably put the article out around Prince of Thieves time.
Yeah, I seem to remember Jason did. It wasn't a porn movie, but it was a really steamy movie. I think it might have been Italian.
Yeah, they shot it in Italy. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
Directly after Robin to try and shed the image, shall we say, and do something completely different.
I'm not sure if that's the one that he signed up for, and when they were trying to get Knights of the Apocalypse made, that was why he had to at one point say, I can't do it anymore, I've taken other work. I know certainly at some point he became unavailable, but I wouldn't swear it was for that film.
No, I mean, that was probably about 87, 88, because it's in the magazine they put out, the Jason Connery dossier.
Yeah.
So that must have come out around the time of Robin or a few years after.
It felt to me like it was his next project afterwards, but I could be misremembering.
Well, he still had the hair.
Yeah.
Or most of it. So I'm guessing it was like almost directly after. Like
that's how I remember it.
Something. It makes sense.
IMDb now. I think it's called The Venetian Woman, 1986.
Yeah,
that
makes
sounds.
sense.
I was going to say. I was going to say it's something like The Romans, or but that would make sense.
Yeah, it's called with Birgitte Nielsen or something. I can't remember now. I've not actually seen it.
It
That
was
was a different one. That was 1988.
Yeah.
That was Bye Bye Baby.
Ah, okay. I'm getting the two confused. It's normal. All right, so let's talk a bit more about this Forest God chap. So as a character, he's very direct and to the point, and he's not actually. If you run across 26 episodes, he actually hasn't got that much screen time. Is there anything you would have liked to have seen from his character that wasn't in the episodes? I kind of would have liked to have seen more scenes where he's tutoring Robin, a bit more mysticism there, a bit more almost like a father figure type role.
Absolutely.
I think that would have been cool.
I'd like to see more of him actually just living as a person. You know, I mean, does he actually live in the cave, or is that just like his, shamanic temple type thing? You know, where does he go the rest of the time? What's he doing? How's he living? How's he eating? You know, that's something I would have been quite interested in seeing.
Yeah.
You know, is Herne the Hunter a title, or is that his name?
Yeah. And where did he come from?
Yeah.
Was he married? Was he a Robin Hood of his time that got outlawed and suddenly then was met by another Herne the Hunter? It's all very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, is he like a sort of a remnant of a druid, and do you have to have years of training to assume this role? If so, who's going to take over? Should there be an apprentice?
Yeah.
Is Robin supposed to be an apprentice? Because the Robin, both of the Robins, they're not although they're experiencing the visions, they're not really controlling them, are they? They're things that are happening to them.
Through her,
Yeah.
I would have kind of liked to see a bit more explanation of that as to why and what it means and how it's done. I realise that there's not really time for that kind of thing.
I mean, the only thing I sort of, it seems, is like Herne often drinks a potion, which presumably has got something in it like magic mushrooms or something, that is causing hallucination. But that doesn't explain how Robin's getting the visions,
Yeah, well, usually Herne gives him a drink.
Yeah.
And after the first time, I'd be kind of like, whoa, hang on a minute, dude.
Yeah.
Remember what happened last time. But, I mean, I would kind of like also to have him telling Robin a little bit about his father, Eorik.
Yeah.
Because they clearly knew each other. Because, as I recall from the novelization, the reason Eorik went to the Stone Circle at the very start of the first episode was he was supposed to meet with Herne.
That's right.
Where was Herne?
Yeah, well, Herne obviously knew that the sheriff was going to pop up and didn't turn up. So you can argue as to whether Herne knew that was going to happen and sacrificed Eorik, or...
The whole prophecy to come about, yes.
Yeah, but just to do the whole prophecy, as you said. Yeah, you can argue and interpret it in different ways. But I would kind of liked that, of Herne saying, you know what, I'll tell you a little bit about your father.
Yeah, because I mean, I know we touched on it in conversations before where, we've said Eorik was the guardian of the arrow.
Yeah.
And he's not a Herne's son. He's a guardian of the arrow, which is a different thing, but we don't know what that is.
No, so a little bit more explanation into the mythology.
The arrow, which was described as this totem of pre-Christian England, was like a rallying symbol for Elric's rebellion, and it was almost like the Ark of the Covenant, and they have to use this arrow ahead of their army in order to win. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, that sounds pretty cool. I like the idea that it's a rallying point, and they do say that in the series, I believe.
Yes, you.
The Robins never use it as that,
An
do
English
they?
thing.
No.
Well, no, again, I would have kind of liked Robin to take it around the villages after he won it in the archery contest and sort of use it as a way to say, do you know what this is? This is a symbol of us. And they kind of, a lot of ways, I feel there's a lot of missed opportunities because of the time it was made and the fact we only got like 26 episodes instead of, if we were lucky nowadays, we might get like 50 or even more.
Yeah.
You never know. If it was long running, I think they did like, how many episodes of Game of Thrones did they do? Was it like 100 or 80 or something? It was some vast amount.
Yeah, I don't think it was 100, but yeah,
Oh, around
probably
80,
60 to 80, yeah.
Yeah, of an hour each, and sometimes they were longer.
Yeah.
Have that with Robin where you could really go into the mythology of it, I think, would have been really, really something special.
Sure.
So it's kind of, with the Silver Arrow, it's such a shame that we only saw it twice in the whole series. So I think we could have used it as a way into the Herne character.
Yeah,
In a way, it's possibly more important than Albion was, because Albion is, we don't know what Albion effectively does until the Swords of Wayland, do we?
Yeah. And then it does something differently in the Power of Albion.
That's right.
So it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's something new. But like with the Silver Arrow, again, we never really learnt what it did, as we said. So I would have...
I can understand why they were sort of rationing it out, because, you know, if you've got this guy in a forest who's seeing visions of what's going to happen, and he's got a magic arrow and a magic sword, he's starting to get a bit superhero-y and undefeatable, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, and the sheriff against him, he's just a bloke who's living off his wits and his intelligence, isn't he? So then it almost begins like there's a tendency that the audience could start siding with the sheriff.
Yeah, just for side with the underdog.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of, I do regret it on some degree that we didn't get a bit more of that magical stuff. And also just Herne the Man, you know, just learning more about him. So,
I mean, they did bring that out more in the third series, didn't they?
a little bit.
There's that line, isn't there, where he gets injured and he sort of says, I think he says to Huntingdon, doesn't he, you see your god become a man.
Oh, that's in Lord of the Trees.
Is it Lord of the Trees? He says
Yeah.
something similar in I think. I can't even remember what episode it is, you know, my brain has gone completely blank. It's
You
the
mentioned in
third.
Time of the Wolf.
Yeah?
Yeah, at the end.
I think is it Rutterkin? It's Rutterkin, isn't it? Where he gets injured.
Right, yeah.
But
no.
yeah, that I mean, I think that was a deliberate move to try and sort of make him a little bit less mysterious.
Yeah,
But I didn't seem to have like a clear thinking story arc between it. That was my impression.
I think as well, I mean, at that time you had 6 episodes in the first year and 7 in the next and 13, and maybe if they'd done a 4th, you maybe get 6 or 7 again. So it's a matter of deciding which stories you want to tell for the writers or writer, depending on who was doing it. So I guess it was also a bit of, okay, I want to tell that story, but I want to tell this one more.
Yeah.
So that might have been something to do with it.
I mean, a good thing, I suppose, from the production point of view, with them having that fabulous costume, is they didn't always need to get John Aveniri in, did they?
No, I mean, they
could get anyone in to wear the
save
costume.
money, and probably frequently did.
Yeah.
Likelihood. I mean, they would have been saving as many pennies as they could.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually, by today's standards, it was pretty cheap television. Not for the time, but by today's standards.
I mean, something I just thought of as well, you know, and it's going back to the thing of canoeness.
Yeah.
And having a snake in one hand and the talk in the other. I'm pretty sure in the novelisation of the first series, when Kip's describing her, he's talking about snakes going up his arms.
Yeah, it was a little more, a bit more of a graphic description than they could do in the series.
Yeah, but I mean that does tie the character back more to the visual
Yeah, I
of
think
Canunus, you know.
Kip could put that in the book as he chose to, I guess, that he couldn't get on screen. I mean,
frequently, there's
yeah.
a lot more magic, I think, actually in the books than there is in the series. Kit was very much straitjacketed at times. There was I had all the scripts and some of the original editions, and certainly in the first series there was a lot more pagan worship around altars. They had a specific scene, I think it must have been in the 7 Poor Nights from Acre, where they're all worshipping around a pagan altar in the middle of the woods, which I thought would have been great if they'd had that in as a scene, but it's very much a superfluous scene, I suppose.
There was also a scene they shot with Robin and Herne from the very first episode where Herne has a knife and he puts it against Robin's forehead.
That's right.
And this is we've only ever seen stills from this, but we know they shot it, and in the book he does it and he says something like, "Good, all paths meet."
Yeah.
But again, it's a little thing that would have been great to see if they could ever dig up the footage, you know, and stick it on the next Blu-ray release in about 10 years' time.
I think we may have had our chips with that one.
The holographic 3D version.
Yeah.
That's about the only other thing they could do with it, I think. I mean, I've said before that, I've bought Robin of Sherwood so many times that the only way they could get me to buy it again is if it came with an actual Judy Trott that pole danced around the living room. But I would consider it for some deleted scenes.
Yeah, it would have to have something new, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I was quite reluctant initially to buy the Blu-rays until I discovered that they had this extra disc with goodies on it. And it was more that sold me. I was blown away by the remastering, but I could have lived without it. I didn't have to have a sharper picture, but the disc with the extra goodies on was what sold that for me.
How could you live without the remastered sharper picture?
Well, what you have never had, you don't miss.
Oh, I don't know. Having been a Blu-ray fan for a few years before that, I was really excited when they said Robin was coming. I was also a bit nervous because I knew they'd shot in 16mm, and it was hard to remaster up to Blu-ray quality, but I remember I pre-ordered it, and when it arrived I put it in, and I was like, wow. So if there's anyone who hasn't got the Blu-ray yet, well, move your ass, come on, it's really good.
Yeah, it is
very
definitely
behind my
worth
technology.
getting.
The Blu-rays are just fantastic.
Yeah, worth every penny, and I believe you can get the complete series for about £40 on eBay.
Don't like the new cover though, do you?
No, but I mean, I tend to not like the way they do cover designs nowadays, because it doesn't seem like art. It seems like you get some images and Photoshop them together.
Yeah, it's like composite, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, what I would always say if you're getting the Blu-rays is that the best place I think to look first is Network Online, who release the Blu-rays. Wait for their sales, and the Robin of Sherwood ones are often in there in the sale. They're a really good company actually. You get it within a couple of days.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
And it's a good deal.
Yeah. So go out and buy them if you've not already.
Yeah. You should be on commission.
Yeah, I will be having strong words with them after I finish this. So, one of the ideas that's been going around fandom for a while is this idea of one of the Robins becoming Herne the Hunter at a later date. How are you feeling about that? Is that something you'd be on board with?
Yeah, I know
I'd certainly welcome it.
The idea was, one of the big ideas was Loxley wasn't really dead, wasn't he? He was like, he was going to come back as a Herne, and they were going to use him in one of the movies. I don't think it was the Knights of the Apocalypse one. I think it was the other one that some fan had written a script for.
Yes.
They were going to use Michael as a Herne, and I think it's a really interesting idea. I have reservations, but an interesting idea.
Well, I mean, it's fine if he's some kind of spirit, but as a character, he's unfortunately extremely dead.
Yeah, I think it lessens the sacrifice that he made.
And
if you're going to say, yeah, well, you thought he was dead, but he's not really.
Yeah, it kind of makes the sheriff and his men look very silly. If he somehow survived what happened to him. And you said lessens the whole episode and his whole story arc.
Yeah.
So,
and also, if I was Marion and any of the other Marys, I'd be flipping annoyed.
Yeah.
If I've been grieving the fact that I've lost my leader and my husband for a year, and then find out he's not actually dead, he's been living in a cave with Herne for a year, going, oh, now I'm Herne the Hunter as well. I'd be annoyed.
Well, I can pretty much guarantee if he managed to survive Greatest Enemy, he would be dead when Marion found out.
or when Scarlett and John found out, to be honest.
Yeah.
Any of those three.
His name would be Mud.
Yeah.
At the very least. So, I don't know about that. As a spirit, then possibly.
Yeah.
Physically,
it doesn't work as a thing, does it? Whatever reservations various fans had about it, the idea was obviously that Marion would end up with Robert. And if you're then going to be throwing Loxley back into the mix in whatever form, that's throwing a whole level of soap onto the series that I don't think it would have coped with.
Well, it's not a soap opera.
No.
I was just going to say, it's not EastEnders, it's Robin of Sherwood. So we don't need this love tryst thing. It's just completely unnecessary.
Yeah, but it would be, if you're bringing Loxley back from the dead, that is going to throw up emotions, isn't it? So that you're going to have to deal with at some point. But like I say, it just becomes a soap opera.
Yeah, I don't think it would work personally.
No, I think it's an interesting idea. I really do, and there's elements of it that I do like. So I don't want to poo-poo it entirely, but I just logically I don't think it will work. I think it's wishful thinking. You just want Loxley back so much.
I think that it's an excuse to bring Michael back into the role.
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember Kip talking about this in Cousins, the fanzine.
Yeah.
2 years ago, and he did not like the idea at all. He was very much against it, so to say. He did not like it. He said there are no
either of multiple men's either. It's It was very specific about how he viewed the progression of the series, I think.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Yeah. He knew it better than anyone else. So he would know what was going to work and what wasn't, in all likelihood.
Yeah.
So that's Herne the Hunter in Robin of Sherwood. Shall we just briefly talk a little bit on the influences of the character and what are the things he's been in before or since, before we wrap this thing up? So, wasn't he in Box of Delights? Was that about the same time?
Yeah, that was
1984. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that just coincidence? Or?
He has appeared in novelizations in the 1970s. The very popular Dark is Rising sequence by Stephen Cooper is mentioned in that.
The Box of Delights, the book, was written a long time before, wasn't it?
It was.
But not on screen. I could be wrong. Obviously, I haven't seen everything. But I do not recall seeing Herne the Hunter on screen before.
No. I believe Masefield took the inspiration from Rudyard Kipling's Puck of Pook Hill, which is mentioned Herne as well.
Right.
So
I think there's elements of the Herne in Box of Delights is in the T.H. White, Sword in the Stone Arthur book.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
they do go through that whole routine where they're changing into different animals.
That's right.
You see it particularly in the Disney adaptation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and when I see that scene in Box of Delights, that's what it reminds me of.
That's right.
You know, I've not seen Box of Delights for years. I have fond memories of it from when it aired.
Very
I just
interesting
remember being
crossover
enraged
there.
by it.
There's a fantastic sequence in the last episode of the Box of Delights where Abner Brown, the villain, almost a kind of a Bel-Em type figure, is actually raising the demon of the weather from what looks like to be a cauldron with a single flame of light coming from the centre, very, very reminiscent of the Swords of Wayland. And that was 1980 or 1984, around the same time.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I know when I watched the Box of Delights, when it aired, I was extremely angry. I think I felt that it had borrowed too heavily from Robin of Sherwood. When I'm watching it again now, I don't really see it in the same way, but I remember at the time I was really quite cross.
Yeah, well, the only thing I really remember that sticks in my mind from Box of Delights is the theme tune at the start and the classic phrase "splendiferous."
Yeah.
That's right.
But I vaguely remember how Herne looked in that, and he was more aligned with Kip's vision, I seem to recall, with the skull.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, his horns were certainly, or antlers were certainly more manageable.
Yeah, well, especially in a forest, one presumes.
Yes.
The cursing that god must have made as he made his way back to his cave must have something to hear.
One thing I always liked about the Ross Herne is that how he moves. And it's probably because he's trying to balance your motorbike helmet on his head with massive antlers on it. But he moves in this really slow, stately fashion. Is quite ethereal, and I really like that. But I think in reality, it's just the practicalities of moving about with this massive unwieldy thing on your head.
Yeah. They might well have put him on a little turning platform for some shots or something.
Yeah.
So it's because in the very first time you see him, he kind of spins around a little bit.
That's right.
Like a wheel or something. So there might have been a bit of trickery there.
Yeah.
In that.
I mean, there's a lot of camera tricks, isn't there, that they used with Herne to sort of maximise the sort of the mysticism. Like the sudden cuts from a long shot to a close up, and they suddenly go zoom.
Yeah, zoom.
And there was lots of that kind of thing that really helped, I think.
Which they actually did in reverse. They reversed out and then reversed the film. So that was quite ingenious, really.
Yeah.
That was Ian Sharp, wasn't it? And then Robert Young, the director from Series 2, just took it to the next level with Herne.
That's right.
Which I think there is a big jump in filmic imagery, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, they're always beautifully lit and beautifully shot with Herne, which again, I do think added to just the whole feel of the character. They always just posed him so beautifully, with the background, with the trees and the light coming through the leaves and everything like that, just to give that extra quality.
Yeah, remarkable for a TV show.
Ian Sharp's vision for the first series was very much the forest was also a character all of its own, and I think it certainly went into a different direction with Robert Young. It became a bit more fast-paced, more of an action romp, a lot more heaviness on the supernatural, but they were both fantastically done.
Oh yeah, I love both of their work on Robin. I think it's some of the best I've ever seen on TV. And certainly at the time there was nothing else like it. But yep, okay, I think we've covered everything here. So I guess we'll just wrap this one up. Yeah?
Great.
Yeah, great.
Yep, so I say thanks to Dan and Karen for giving their amazing input.
Thank you.
Yep. And
Really
we'll
nice having a natter.
Yeah, it always is. All right then, I guess we'll see you guys later.
Take care. See you soon.